The Sun Belt is voting on the latest realignment move today. Please just do the right thing.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin, and thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Ole Miss, a pullback or advancing team in 2025. A couple different thoughts there, plus SEC Power Rankings reaction, and LSU with another big win on the recruiting trail. That's all in today's show, brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. So, the Sun Belt voting today, 10 of 13 universities. And who votes on realignment? Gosh, I wonder if there's like a podcast host out there who hosts a daily college football show that reminds people who votes on realignment. Oh, presidents. Yeah, I think I heard that from somebody out there. Pretty good looking, talented guy, or so I hear. Anyway, so presidents vote on realignment. The presidents in the Sun Belt should vote today to add Louisiana Tech. It makes geographical sense to bring them up from Conference USA. And that's just not something we get a whole lot of. A couple of reasons why this move should happen. Number one, the geography. So we have conferences in which Maryland and USC are in the same league. It doesn't make sense. There's no logic to it. People travel all over the place. Mick Cronin, UCLA's basketball coach, was talking about it last year. Man, we've seen the Statue of Liberty twice in the last couple of weeks. The SEC didn't really go that far outside of its footprint to get Oklahoma and Texas, but the Big 12 has got UCF and Utah in it. They're not very close to each other. I mean, anytime you have the opportunity in a sport, in this sport in particular, to hold on, to maintain the importance of regionality and to remind people, yeah, this is actually a good idea, you should do it. You should do it. I'm just going to support that across the board. And I wasn't against Texas State going into the Pac-12. I think that there are a lot of benefits to that particular move. UNLV, though, was number one on my realignment wish list for the Pac-12, in part because Las Vegas is much more centrally located in the new Pac-12's footprint than is Texas State. But UNLV not available, Texas State becomes the option, and here is the likely, hopefully, by the time you're listening to or watching the show, backfill result for the Sun Belt. Now, I don't think the Sun Belt was ever really threatened here, and if that were to somehow come about one day, I don't think it would. The Mountain West would likely be the beneficiary. Like, maybe the Pac-12 would go looking at schools in the Sun Belt if the league ever imploded one day. But thankfully, it doesn't really seem to me, or I think anybody else, like it ever got anywhere near that point where we were questioning the existence of the league, as we did with the former Pac-12, RIP, or with the Mountain West when they lost 5 schools, or when the Big 12 lost Texas and Oklahoma, or plenty of conferences that have gone by the wayside, like the Southwestern Conference back in the day, the All-South Conference back in the day. So Louisiana Tech, once member of the WAC, then Conference USA, then now is going to probably be a member of the Sun Belt. It just makes geographic sense, number one. Number two, I was just kind of touching on this. This doesn't send huge ripples through the realignment landscape and should allow things to settle down. Emphasis on should. All of these things can come about at any time. The Pac-12 has been quiet on the media rights front. The Pac-12 has been quiet on a second expansion team front. It doesn't seem like they are going after a second all-sports member. Maybe they go after St. Mary's for basketball, but on the football front, feels like they are good, like they are set for now. I wanted them to add 2 schools. Maybe they explored that and weren't able to find a second school that works, or a second school that was willing to take the offer, or they just wanted the one school, maximize the media rights payout, and Texas State is coming in at a reduced share anyway. But this should allow things to settle down. The next corresponding move that a number of different reporters have speculated is in the pipeline, presuming Louisiana Tech leaves Conference USA, is Tarleton State would get added to Conference USA. They just pulled up another school of formerly of the WAC in Sam Houston, and Sam Houston is starting to have a little bit more athletic success. So geographically, that again would make some sense for Conference USA. And I don't think that dramatically destabilizes any conference, including the newly formed UAC down at the FCS levels. I think that this can all finally kind of settle down and we get a clear picture of what the conferences are going to look like, how much they're all going to be worth, how we should assess them, and all that sort of stuff. So I think that it makes a lot of sense. And the third reason why I would like the Sun Belt to approve this move is kind of going back to the geography, but you already have two schools in Louisiana that are in the conference. Regional matchups lead to rivalries if they don't already exist. You can't fake that sort of stuff. When schools can drive to each other's campuses, I'm telling you, I don't care if you are playing football in the SEC or in the Big Sky. When schools can drive to each other's campuses, you just have a greater sense of importance for that game. More likely the rivalries continue. Rivalries can be renewed like Texas A&M was when the Aggies joined the SEC, or when Texas, I should say, joined the SEC following Texas A&M's departure back in the day. So I think those are all solid reasons as to why adding Louisiana Tech to the Sun Belt makes sense. It's logical. These are the normal sorts of moves. Realignment's always existed, not at the craziness that it has in the last 3 years. Not at this level, but it's always happened. Schools are always looking for more power, more money, more exposure, any of that sort of stuff. I don't think that Louisiana Tech is dramatically shifting the college football, or the college football playoff landscape, I should say, because that's not a program that I think is just jumping into a league that can send a school to the playoff. I think starting in 2026, sure. Why the heck not? James Madison's a school that comes to mind. Appalachian State maybe comes to mind. I don't think that the Sun Belt is radically transformed with regards to its playoff chances. So holding serve, status quo, keeping it as is, nothing wrong with any of those sorts of things. And the Pac-12, adding Texas State, not adding Texas State, I think their playoff chances were roughly the same, but I think adding the Bobcats is an incredibly logical move. They seem to have an ascending athletics department, and university, generally speaking, they have to show they can sustain football success beyond a couple of seasons, but I think the new Pac-12 is in a significantly better place than the Sun Belt. You're not changing anything. I don't think I'm breaking any news to anybody there. You're not changing how the Group 5 landscape looks considerably, but you are just kind of stabilizing. Let everybody take a step back for a moment and go, okay, how exactly do these conferences match up? How does this one look against that? How does this conference compare to that conference? And we can assess where the landscape goes from here. So I hope we get this piece of realignment news, because I think it makes a lot of sense. I hope it gets formally done today. Don't wait. Just get it out of the way. Get it done. You shouldn't have to debate all that much. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. Let's get back to football, shall we? Ole Miss, jump forward or pull back in 2025? I have one thought, but my guest has another thought. First, this episode brought to you by Game Time. We've all been there, logging on early, waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show that you've been dying to see. I'm sure plenty of Taylor Swift fans have gone through that. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with the stress of ticket shopping, and that is where Game Time comes in. Game Time makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with their killer last-minute deals. And as someone who's used Game Time on multiple occasions, I can tell you the process is really good. You get a view of your seat before you arrive, so you know exactly what to expect. The tickets get delivered to your phone. Their all-in pricing feature gives you exactly what the total is going to be up front. No surprises at checkout. That is what makes Game Time great, and more. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem that code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. I've got Ole Miss slotted 7th in my preseason SEC power rankings. Steven Willis of Locked On Ole Miss is here to discuss. For those who haven't seen on YouTube yet, they go like this. We'll just go 1 through 10. Steven: Georgia, Texas, Alabama, LSU, South Carolina, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Florida, Texas A&M, and Tennessee there at number 10. I want to start with your Rebels. 9-3 last year, the most disappointing 9-3 team probably in all of college football. I had them going 10-2 or 11-1. They go 9-3. We don't need to rehash all of that. Are they a pullback team in 2025 in your eyes?
Oh, yeah. I think Locked On Ole Miss, we did our predictions, and I predicted 10-2. The 2 losses being on the road at Georgia and on the road at Oklahoma. I think they're able to win those games. I think Austin Simmons is a 1-1 level quarterback. I think everybody's going to see that pretty quick. And Ole Miss has talent all over the field. PFF rated them the number 8 program in all of college football. I think you kind of overshot the mark whenever you were ranking Ole Miss in your rankings.
You think they go 10-2 this year?
Yep.
After going 9-3 last year. Mm-hmm. Losing some pretty high-profile NFL draft picks, including their quarterback, including Walter Nolan and Trey Harris, and you think the record is getting better? Because when I say pull back, Steven, I mean regress. I mean not be quite as good as last year. But you think
I don't think they'll be as talented. I think the record will be better. Ole Miss has 8 home games this season. They play 5
That's
of
a lot.
They play 5 of their first 6 at home. Their hardest game in that period is a home game against LSU, which they will be favored in. They will be favored in 11 of the 12 games that they play. They do go back-to-back against Georgia and Oklahoma on the road in the middle. That's 2 of their 3 road games, or 2 of their 4 road games back-to-back in the middle. Ole Miss after that has South Carolina at home. They have the Citadel. They have Florida at home, and they go to Mississippi State. 2 of their 4 road games is at Kentucky and at Mississippi State. So if Ole Miss just holds serve at home, which traditionally Lane Kiffin has done very well, all of a sudden you look at Oklahoma and at Georgia as the biggest landmines on your schedule.
I agree. Those are the landmines. The home slate should be pretty epic for the Rebels. LSU, South Carolina, Florida. That's pretty good lineup. Can I throw something at you before we dive into the rest of my SEC power rankings you have a problem with? Mississippi State is going to beat somebody this year that they shouldn't.
Tennessee.
At least in the eye. Boy, do you and I see the world the same way all the time? No. Were we thinking the same thing there? Yeah, we were. Because I've said, after watching Jeff Lebby's first season last year, they weren't good, they weren't talented, but I watched him and went, you know what? I think that guy's got his head screwed on as a head coach. I think they take that small step this year and just beat somebody that everyone goes, what? They beat who? Who lost to Mississippi? Could be Tennessee. But, Steven, rivalry game, it's in Starkville this year. Would that shock you if the Egg Bowl went the way of the Bulldogs?
Yes, it would shock me. Now, it would not shock me if that game was 17-7. It would not shock me if it was a low-scoring, tough football game, because traditionally it has been. Right now, I think Ole Miss is favored by 15.5 points on FanDuel. That's way too many points for that game, but I do think Ole Miss is going to win. Ole Miss has won 4 out of the last 5 games against Mississippi State in Starkville. They lost one time, and that was the game that got you Lane Kiffin to Oxford, Mississippi.
No, it turned out to be all right, all things considered. Kiffin is one of the many reasons I have Ole Miss as high as I do in my rankings, Steven. I think we have established pretty solidly what kind of program he runs, where the floor, where the ceiling is. I don't think he's hit his ceiling yet at Ole Miss. I think he's capable of getting him back to the opportunity they squandered a season ago. But the floor is clearly high, and I have them slotted one place ahead of Florida because of Lane Kiffin versus Billy Napier. I think that I'm not a Billy Napier guy. I know everybody likes him because of how they ended last season, and I just cannot forget that they were trounced twice in a 3-week span on their home field. I'm not a Billy Napier guy. So I love DJ Lagway. Definitely trust him more than Austin Simmons as we record this show on July 13th. But Is there anything else in these conference rankings, particularly in the top 10, that you think is objectionable for the SEC?
Yeah, you know how much I love coming on this show, but I want to see this rankings. You got a new quarterback at Georgia, a new quarterback at Texas, a new quarterback at Alabama, a new quarterback at Oklahoma. Those positions, it's almost brand because it's Georgia, Texas, Alabama, and Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Brand is like the tie of putting them in the top 7. I think Ole Miss, listen, if Ole Miss would have played South Carolina for 8 quarters last year, they would not have scored a touchdown. And maybe that is clouding my judgment of what's going on. But Ole Miss is a better team than South Carolina. Ole Miss is better than Oklahoma. LSU is the only returning quarterback, but they're having to deal with the offensive line turnover. And everybody loves Arch Manning. Whenever you hear about Arch Manning, everybody loves Arch Manning. Arch Manning has an all-new offensive line to deal with and all-new wide receivers. We don't know how that's going to end up. And the only time we saw Ty Simpson was against South Florida in a game that Alabama barely won. I'm saying pump the brakes a little bit on these rankings of what's going on. You got Missouri, I think, a little bit too low. I think you got Vandy too low, and it feels weird.
I thought about it. Vandy's at 13, and just for the outrage from Blackerby, I thought about putting Vandy above Auburn. He might have let his show with it every day for an entire week. I'm not bullish on Hugh Freeze and Auburn this year. The talent is really good on the Auburn roster. They underachieved so much last year. And Vandy, I think, not necessarily overachieved. I mean, compared to their preseason expectations, yes. But with Diego Pavia, the talent on the field, I think they came close to hitting their ceiling. 7-6 is kind of where they are. I'm not going to sit here and ever trust Vanderbilt going into a season to be a top half program in the SEC. Like, it's just not where I think a reasonable expectation could be until they prove otherwise. They do have one of the most experienced quarterbacks in the conference, but I want to go back. I'm glad you pointed that out because Vanderbilt is an interesting one, and I think it's frankly great that they're not last in my rankings, and I don't think I think if you put them last, it would be objectionable, seeing as they went to a bowl game last year. Here's my thinking on the top 3. I'm with you on the quarterback uncertainty because, of course, there isn't a proven quarterback in the top 5, really, for my rankings. You've got Georgia, Texas, Bama, LSU, and South Carolina outside of Garrett Nussmeier. Lenora Sellers, I've seen more of him than Arch Manning, so I'd probably have him slightly ahead. But Georgia, Texas, Bama, yeah, certainly some questions. I trust that Georgia is going to put a caliber team around Gunnar Stockton, who I saw in the playoff and I thought was pretty darn good. I think they're going to get back to being what they were, because Kirby Smart just pulled off what he has described as the best coaching job in his tenure. This is not somebody who the game is passing him by, he's lost a step or anything like that. Unless I'm given incredibly compelling evidence, I'm going to give that benefit of the doubt to the reigning SEC champions who went to Texas and won, beat him again on a neutral field. That's a really difficult thing to do. I think Stockton just has to be solid, and I think Kirby Smart has got plenty of talent on that roster to just be a top 3rd team in the SEC, or top 4 or 5 team overall in the SEC.
Possibly. I mean, that's real. And if you look at college football as a whole, think of how many top 30 level teams are replacing quarterbacks this year. So many. So much unknown this year. And so I don't envy that you having to come up with a list like this. I don't envy that at all. But the main problem that I have is, like, everybody is in favor of Arch Manning. And one of the arguments that I have, and I'm an Ole Miss person, that's Archie Manning and Eli Manning. So whenever I say this, know that it's not coming from necessarily a bad place. But if his name was Arch Davis, Texas would not be the number 2 team in the conference.
I don't know, because I've watched Arch start multiple games, look pretty good, and win.
That was ULM, UTSA, and Mississippi State.
You got an SEC team in there and a couple of G5s that are respectable.
But he did come in against Georgia and had to get taken back out again because of performance.
No, I understand that. Where I come down is a guy that is going into his 3rd year who's going to have, I think, a true number 1 caliber wideout in Ryan Wingo on the perimeter with a
And
good
the running
offense.
backs are going to be nasty.
Yes, a good offensive play caller like Sark and a defense that I think is going to be nasty again. A unit I loved all last year, and it felt like it took the rest of the country half a season to catch up to where I was on the Texas defense, which is, are you looking at these guys? There are playmakers all over the place. Well, they've got that again. I mean, Colin Simmons is ferocious. Anthony Hill Jr. is a stud. They've got a DB or two coming back from last year. I like where Texas is at. And I've seen, by the way, I've seen more from Arch than I have seen from Ty Simpson in Alabama, than I have seen from Austin Simmons at Ole Miss, than I have seen from Joey Aguilar at Tennessee. Like, there aren't
John Mateer at Oklahoma.
I like Mateer. I've watched a lot of Mateer. I just haven't watched any John Mateer in the SEC.
Yes.
That's why I wonder, because Venables does have that defense playing well. They are talented. I think they've had a good portal cycle, and there's a lot of pressure there to win, and I think that can kick some coaching staffs into high gear. I'm not the biggest Brent Venables fan. I just think that in the offseason, I think they have done a good job. And the defensive, now I was concerned year one with Brent Venables that the defense stunk. I was like, man, you should have been able to come in and fix that quicker than you did. It keeps getting better. It was a really good unit last year. The offense was incompetent. I don't think Mateer goes to New York as a Heisman finalist. I do think that with his running ability, he gives them a certain floor that makes me have to trust him more than some of the other quarterbacks in the SEC. That's why I had Oklahoma as high as I did.
I will say this about Texas. If you wanted to tell me that the offensive line struggled at Texas, if the injury bug hit the wide receiver unit, they had a really good defense, and you had a 5-star quarterback back behind, and you hope you could get some healthy running backs in the system, I'd say that was Oklahoma in 2024. And that's the problem for Texas. They have them preseason ranked number 1 in the country, but they're a couple of injuries and a bunch of unknowns away from getting pretty weird, in my opinion. I think Oklahoma is going to be pretty good this year, if we're just honest about it. I think Texas is on 8-4 watch this year.
He said it. I didn't say it, folks. It was said on this show. I fully admit that. I could have edited it out. I didn't. But Steven Willis of Locked On Ole Miss said that. We love them. We love them for it anyway. We're sticking with the SEC. Hopping to the trail. LSU on fire. Of the top 5 players in the class of 2026 in the 24/7 composite, 2 of them are going to the same school, Matt Moscona's school, from Locked On LSU, here to discuss Lamar Brown, the latest. Tristan Keys, will talk about him as well, but a 5-star defensive lineman goes to the Tigers. Matt, your initial reaction?
It's a massive get, Spencer. I mean, you got to understand with context. Lamar Brown plays at U High. That's the LSU lab school. The campus is literally on LSU's campus. I mean, he practices across the fence from where LSU football practices. So this is a kid that LSU has been recruiting since he was a 9th grader. It's one of those that you can't let get away. And if he does get away, you can't let him get away to someone you're going to play every year, which would have been the case here with Texas A&M. Because of the many years LSU has invested in Lamar, the great position of need, because he's going to play edge. By the way, he's a high school offensive lineman who just decides he's going to be a great edge in college. This was a must get for LSU. And they did the legwork. They were going to make sure that it didn't come down to money, NIL, rev share, whatever. They were going to make sure all that was square. And it was going to come down to being a football decision. And the Tigers got Lamar Brown to stay home. It's a massive deal.
A couple things. First, it almost sounds like it's a sigh of relief more than, wow, I can't believe they got this kid. This is exciting, when you're just looking at the recruiting angle of it. And number 2, are there a lot of kids that are playing offensive line that are just going to decide, I'm just going to play edge in college? Why not?
Yeah, so he does play defensive line as well, but I talked to Lamar's coach, Andy Martin, who I've known for a long time, and Andy said point blank, listen, we had a great need there a couple of years ago, and he was our best guy, so they put him on the offensive line, and he became the number 1 interior offensive lineman in the country in this class. But teams that were recruiting him were effectively saying, you can play either side of the ball. He's that good of an athlete. Spencer, he's 6'5", 300 pounds. His coach confirmed that to me this week. So they just went, for their preseason, they just went through their weigh-ins and everything. He said they're running there 40 times next week. He's running with the skill guys, the receivers, the running backs, and the DBs. He's running the 40 time with those guys. 6'5", 300 with that 40 time. Like, God just didn't make many of them, right? So he can do whatever he wants to do. And he wants to play defensive line in college. And so every team that was recruiting him was going to let him pick. And so, look, we go out there for spring practice, and Lamar wasn't with the offensive line. He was over watching Bo Davis, Kevin Peoples, and the defensive line in spring ball, or Kyle Williams, I should say, and Kevin Peoples in the defensive line. So it's pretty clear he identified this is what he wants to do at the next level, but it doesn't hurt that as a fallback. If for whatever reason it doesn't work out for him on the defensive line, he could always flip and play offense and be the best interior lineman on LSU's team.
Is this a guy who you think comes in next fall and starts making an impact right away for Brian Kelly's defense?
So that's a really good question. And it's the right question. And the answer is yes. And not just because he's this type of athlete. It's certainly part of it. But remember, LSU went in this portal cycle and signed 3 defensive ends. They're all gone after this year. So after 2025, LSU is going to have one guy, Gabe Relaford, one guy with real significant playing time. So I'm not telling you Lamar Brown steps on campus and is a day one starter. But what I'm telling you is there's a clear path to him being part of a rotation as a true freshman in 2026.
Big picture for LSU recruiting right now, do you feel good about where the Tigers are at with 2 of the top 5 players in the country?
Yeah, I was looking at, I think On3 has their average rating per prospect is the highest in the country. So right now for LSU, it's a quality over quantity thing. They have 16 commits. In their top 5 in the country, where you look at a team like USC, I think has 31 right now, which
31 is correct.
Yeah. So roughly half that number, and they're right there hovering in the top 5. So I don't know that, Spencer, I don't know that this is a class where LSU is going to sign 30. They may settle in the low 20s in this high school class. I also think one of the really big, interesting topics is going to be, how much do they start to lean into the portal over high school recruiting? This portal class LSU just signed with 18 ads was the number 1 portal class in the country. And if they go win with this portal class and all those guys are gone after this year and Nussmeier's gone, you go right back and go heavy in the portal. To answer your question specifically, yeah, they're the guys they have committed, they're doing a fantastic job. Can you keep them committed, get them to sign in December, all that stuff? But I think the bigger question is, how much do they lean into portal over high school recruiting? And that's something we'll find probably after this season plays out.
I don't think we've fully settled in the college football world the debate, because we're only a couple years into it, frankly, of what's the right ratio of high school recruits to transfer. What's the line of, okay, you've got too many transfers here. You can't establish culture, not enough continuity, guys having to learn a new all that. I don't think we've quite gotten there. I just know that at one end of the spectrum for the last couple of years, Clemson and Stanford were taking too few, and at the other end, Colorado is too dependent on the portal. Now, all of those programs, except for Stanford, have had varying levels of success, and Indiana last year, bunch of transfers for year 1, but USC had that in 2022, right, where everybody came over with Lincoln Riley. It was a bunch of transfers. They didn't build through high school recruiting the way that they're capable of. Now they're doing it after 2 years of regression. What's your expected snapshot for LSU in the next couple of seasons as they try to navigate that roster construction space?
Yep. So all that is on point. And so Brian Kelly, when he was hired, said his goal was to build, recruit, and develop through the high school rankings and supplement in the portal. That's how they wanted to do it. But his first year, you remember, he inherited a situation from Ben Ogeron where they played that bowl game with 38 scholarship players. They had to go get portal guys just to have a competent roster. And so they did. But they went from 20 portal guys to 13 portal guys. And last year they signed 9. So they kept decreasing the portal guys. And last year was a roster not capable of competing at the highest level. This year, they didn't keep that regression. They went to 18 portal ads. They doubled the number year to year. And I think they're going to have a really good season. So I think the idea that you'd love to build through the high school ranks and supplement in the portal is great in theory. The problem is when you go sign that elite high school class, how many of those guys leave after 1 year? I mean, if you just look at LSU's numbers, I can't speak to everybody in college football. I just know the team that I covered day in, day out. They're losing about a quarter of their signing class every year. So after 2 years, you've lost half of your signing class. So going into what you think would be their junior year where that class is ready to go, you've lost half that class. So can you really rely on high school recruiting if those guys aren't going to stay? I think that's the conundrum all of these coaches, all these general managers are having right now. In theory, I think that's the best thing to do if you could keep them. But what the evidence is showing is half the guys aren't staying after 2 years. And if that's the case, then you have to go into the portal to supplement your roster. Otherwise, you're just consistently playing freshmen. And that's not a methodology that's going to win at the highest level.
Yeah, I think we're at least 2, if not 3 years from having real concrete data to point to and say, all right, here are the trends that work. Here's this. Here's the exception. Here's the rule, and all of that sort of stuff. I want to get you out of here on this. I read an article yesterday talking about Tennessee making a big push for LSU's other top 5 national recruit, Tristan Keys, the wide receiver. Are you worried at all that he could flip from the Tigers to somewhere else, whether that's the Vols or a different SEC school?
Hey, man, you're talking about the program that had Bryce Underwood committed for a year. And then a week before signing day, Larry Ellison came and dropped $12 million in his lap and he flipped. So, yeah, I think everybody here is gun shy. It's funny, even for those, if you don't remember that, I mean, Bryce Underwood was the number 1 quarterback in the country. I mean, many thought he was the best, maybe high school quarterback since Trevor Lawrence, one of these really great players. He was committed to LSU solidly for a year. And the CEO of Oracle dropped a big bag on him a week before signing day, and he flipped. And LSU it basically affected 2 recruiting classes at quarterback. So everybody here, Spencer, it's like even Lamar Brown committing this week, people are like, let's wait and see if he signs in December when the ink dries. It's interesting because Lamar Brown tweeted, I don't want to hear any of this, let's wait until the ink dries stuff. Like everyone else had their chance, I'm in. So that goes to show you, like, he's even heard it, right? So with Tristan Keys, yeah. I mean, look, there was a point last year where LSU had Underwood, the number 1 quarterback, Decorian Moore, the number 1 receiver, and Harlan Berry, the number 1 running back, all committed. And when it came to signing day, they got one of the guys, Harlan Berry. Of course, Moore's up there in Oregon, and Bryce Underwood flipped to Michigan. So, yeah, I mean, of course, Tristan Keys is the number 1 receiver in the country. Everybody's after him. In an NIL rev share era, you could always have an ambitious booster who drops a bag on somebody and they could flip. So, yeah, of course, I think everybody's leery of that happening again. It's not just Tennessee. He's taking visits to Miami, to Alabama. And all the usual suspects that are willing to spend on a roster could certainly make a play for him before it's all said and done.
I just came up with a term while you were talking that LSU fans are suffering from. It's called FPTRSD, Fan Post-Traumatic Recruiting Stress Disorder. I think that's a pretty clear and easy to remember acronym that will catch on widely across.
Super simple.
Yes, incredibly simple.
Easy. I've got a committed memory already.
Yeah, I got it already. I had to
HTTP:///
Yeah. I think that'll catch on really fast. I just want to trademark it right now before it gets out there and someone's taking credit for my work. Matt Moscona, Locked On LSU. He's down at SEC Media Days in Atlanta this week. I appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.